There's no getting around it. The gaming industry at large isn't looking so hot in 2024. Big budget games are not meeting expectations. Live service projects dropping like flies. Rightfully so. It's the first 30 seconds, and I cannot say enough profanity to express how I feel about live service games. So, there's layoffs happening all over the place. It's a bad scene all around. But Xbox has had a particularly rough year. It's so bad that it's got fans and developers concerned about the future of the entire Xbox brand. It's just bad news on top of bad news at Xbox, and their chief executive officer, your boy Phil Spencer, is only adding fuel to the fire with his confusing messaging. He's not making a lot of sense, is what I'm saying. Like in the last few years, kind of felt like everything was coming up Millhouse for Xbox. Game Pass was going to completely change how we consume games. To be frank, I have used Game Pass a whole hell of a lot. And they were acquiring some really high-profile, well-liked developers. In fact, a whole bunch of them. Xbox was going to save the gaming industry, not destroy it. Now in 2024, there's a lot of people who are seriously starting to wonder if we're looking at Xbox's exit from the console business entirely, which last year would have been a crazy thought, but here we are. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, why Xbox needs a comeback. Now, for Sony's part, their pricing of the PS5 has been absolutely absurd. Particularly the PS5 Pro. It's a $700 console. That's crazy. But the thing is, they're doing that because they know they're winning. They don't have to really compete that much, and in all seriousness, that gives us a pretty good reason for why competition in this sort of a market is actually super important. Sony's getting a little big for their britches here. If Xbox could, get their shit together, Sony could be held to a little bit more account. Now, I don't actually know why, but there have been people on this channel's comments that have said, I'm a Sony fanboy. It's actually very much not true. I'm completely console agnostic, and if anything, the fact that Xbox has been shitting the bed so hard that Sony thinks, we can announce the PS5 Pro for $700 frickin' dollars. This presents a very compelling case for a multi-console market being good for the industry, good for the consumer, good for pretty much everything, because while I am not going to pretend that inflation is not out of control, I also don't think $700 is even close to necessary. I know they're supposed to make money, but that is a flagrant profit-oriented markup that could only happen due to the fact their competition is shitting the bed. Congrats to them on those margins, but man, that's a ridiculous price. Xbox really needs to turn things around, guys. For a brief, shining moment, Xbox ruled the gaming industry. They got the Xbox 360 out a year before the PlayStation 3, and for most of that console generation, they maintained that momentum. The PlayStation 3 did eventually outsell the Xbox. At least, I think it did. The evidence is a little vague, but either way, it was a very close race, and that's a huge step up compared to what the original Xbox was doing. Xbox OG sold about 24 million consoles in total, which is nothing to sneeze at, but compare that to PlayStation 2, which sold 150 million units, and that's only as many as they reported. That number could be bigger. For Xbox to stand up to that kind of market domination and actually claim some kind of victory was pretty impressive, and it wasn't a surefire thing, but they made it happen. The whole Red Ring of Death debacle could have killed them, but Xbox did the right thing, pushed through, repaired all the affected consoles for free, and boy oh boy did that ever cost them a shitload of money. That's a difficult and very costly choice, but it was the right one, and it allowed Xbox to retain its market share and even weirdly build some kind of customer trust. If they mess up, they're going to take care of you. That's a good feeling. Unfortunately, they did not keep that momentum going for the Xbox One. The writing was on the wall from minute one when that disastrously out of touch and misguided E3 presentation in 2013 pretty much threatened to kill all the gains they'd made in the previous generation. It was so bad that in their own documentary about the creation of Xbox, it straight up admitted that the Xbox lost its way and that they may never catch up because of how bad they screwed the pooch on that 2013 presentation. Even though that documentary is 2 years old, the doom and gloom of its final chapter feels more at home with 2024 Xbox than 2022. And it's weird because you'd think they'd end on some kind of positive note, but the whole thing ends with everyone upset about the Xbox One. It's actually kind of amazing. Maybe they knew something that we didn't, but Yeah, all this might not seem super important to the console division's current problems, but you got to know the past to understand the present. History is the substrate by which today's actions all take place on. Xbox would just not be doing what it's doing now if not for its failure to capitalize on the gains made by the 360. It's the reason they've been slowly shifting away from the console maker mindset, because in their eyes, they just can't compete with Nintendo and Sony at that level. So instead of trying to do what they do, they're doing something else. And that's not necessarily a bad idea. I'm not sure Game Pass makes sense as a profit driver or even a loss leader. As a unique service, though, it's a pretty great value and there's no denying that. If you could make that into a profitable business model on its own rather than a loss leader, I think you got a winner there. Originally, they were attempting to drive console players to buy an Xbox Series to gain access to those free games that come with Game Pass. They're obviously not free. You pay a monthly fee, but relatively speaking, they're much more close to free than they ever were. The problem is that console sales didn't correlate to Game Pass, didn't really move the needle, so they needed new revenue streams. So they started to butt up against the reality that hardcore gaming is a market that's only so big. There's only room for so much growth, especially for people willing to buy Xbox consoles, so they had to change things to keep that line going up. I think the initial goal of Microsoft's many gaming acquisitions was more exclusives in their ecosystem. That's not what ended up happening for a lot of reasons, but from everything I've read, I think that was their original objective. When they got Bethesda, it was 100% to lock down the next Elder Scrolls game. Think about that. They had to have thought that was the boon for Xbox. When they acquired Activision, the same thing, Call of Duty, right? But government regulators started breathing down their necks, so they made a few promises to keep certain franchises multi-platform. And they wouldn't have followed through on that in all seriousness if it made any business sense for them. If the money was there, they would have made Call of Duty an Xbox exclusive in a heartbeat. But let's seriously talk about the idea of selling Call of Duty yearly on every console versus Call of Duty yearly on one. Duh! Game Pass as a system seller is a non-starter. Console sales are down this generation across the board, but Xbox Series versus Xbox One isn't even a rosy picture. Forget the 360. And it doesn't really matter how much Phil Spencer tries to spin the situation to sound like Game Pass is some kind of infinite growth machine. The fact of the matter is that it just isn't. Xbox has been struggling to find vectors for growth, and they're not getting it through traditional console sales, and the standard business model of having exclusives isn't driving sales for them. The console's easily one of the weakest parts of their business right now, but instead of coming up with a coherent plan to find a way forward for Xbox as a whole, all we've seen from them is just a lot of awkward flailing. Things are just not looking great for the Xbox, and like I said, it's not exactly like Sony's been doing super great with their console division. It seems like Sony wanted a live service game way past the point where no one else wanted a live service game. Concord flopped so hard. It's not like there aren't some cool things about it, but there's just nothing there that makes it different from anything else, at least significantly enough to be, Sony's big thing. Maybe 10 years ago, Concord could have been something, but it's doubtful. Nobody has ever really loved live service games, as a whole anyway. The entire PlayStation Pro reveal also, that's generated zero heat. Don't know why they bought the money pit that is Bungie. They've been doing a lot of dumb things recently too, but nobody's really seriously worried about the future of PlayStation. On the other hand, Xbox's next 5 years are a lot murkier. And to make this clear, Microsoft is fine. They are not going anywhere. They have a stranglehold on the PC market. They're way too big to fail. The gaming division, on the other hand, that's a different story. Microsoft doesn't need the gaming division. They're a tiny blip in their overall profits. It wouldn't make sense, and it would be disastrous for the industry as a whole. Or maybe not, I don't know, if they cut the gaming division. But Microsoft isn't exactly known for smart business decisions. You never know. Sometimes there really is no plan, and that's exactly the impression I'm kind of getting about what's going on with Xbox. After the COVID gaming boom, acquisitions were the big thing. So Xbox got Activision with no clear goal of what they actually wanted to do with it. Now we're seeing the consequences of that decision. Mass layoffs, Phil Spencer appearing on emergency podcasts saying vague things about the multi-platform future of Xbox. Real panic started setting in among Xbox fans when Microsoft started cutting studios like Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks. Sure, Arcane put out the stinker Redfall, but that was under Microsoft's watch. Well, Tango put out one of the rare crossover hits that Microsoft desperately needed with Hi-Fi Rush. Don't really know why that happened. The management team heaped specific praise on the studio less than a year later, and now they cut them entirely. We're all pretty fortunate that back in August, Krafton, a South Korean publisher, acquired Tango Gameworks, essentially saving the Hi-Fi Rush franchise. Unfortunately, Microsoft still owns an Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. It does look like Microsoft does want to remain involved by supporting Krafton and Tango in some way, but that's weird business talk, I suspect. I'm happy Tango still exists, though. But even a game studio that gave him a hit wasn't good enough. That basically puts a big question mark over everyone in the gaming division at Microsoft. And layoffs, they're inevitable after a massive acquisition. Activision is huge. There was going to be some redundancy, but still, 2,550 total jobs have been cut from the Microsoft Xbox gaming division since 2023. It's been bad times for layoffs in the gaming industry in general, but that is a lot from what is technically one company. Xbox kind of used to be a safe haven for studios. During the early days of Game Pass, studios like Obsidian and Double Fine got positives from Microsoft with a more hands-off publishing style. They were free to make the games that they wanted, and they made them the way they wanted to make them, while having the support structure of a massive tech company. It was the best of both worlds, and now that entire situation is gone. Things are looking a lot more grim nowadays. Xbox is still apparently hands-off generally. They're not great at managing their studios, and never has been. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it leads to problems. If they were a little more hands-on with 343 and the Halo franchise, maybe they'd be in a little bit better place. But their flagship gaming series is kind of, what it is now. But the thing is, now they're hands off and the safety net is gone. If you're not profitable, you get cut. And I don't know what circumstances led to them cutting a studio that made them a big old crossover hit like Hi-Fi Rush. But yeah, doesn't matter how much the leadership praises you publicly, they'll axe you with little to no warning. Yeah, Tango was miraculously brought back from the dead, so the damage isn't as bad as it could have been. But that's just Tango. The other places, we haven't seen that happen. Phil Spencer, again, not helpful. He's been messaging out with a lot of corporate wishy-washy talk, and he avoids the central question fans have been asking like the plague. What is the actual future of the Xbox, Phil? You keep banging on about some vague multiplayer future that the entire gaming industry simply has to move toward, but what does that mean? There's signs of trouble everywhere. The head of the European marketing went online to publicly complain about their lack of a budget compared to PlayStation. If you're an Xbox fan in Europe, you're already well aware of how much they've neglected that region in the past, but from what I've read, it sounds like it's gotten worse. Xbox's presence in Europe has always been small, but it seems like they've all but given up there. Developers are giving up on Xbox as well. The makers of Black Myth Wukong made the game for PlayStation and PC, conspicuously leaving out Xbox. This could be some kind of exclusive deal with PlayStation, at least that's what the Forbes article on the subject says, but I haven't seen that corroborated anywhere. It could be a technical issue because that has been a recurring problem for the system. It could be that they only wanted to develop on one platform while developing on the PC, and they just evaluated that PlayStation was more likely to make the money. Maybe they could do it with Xbox later, maybe not. I don't know. I would put a little stock in the idea of technical issues. The developers behind Baldur's Gate 3 ran into issues getting the co-op to work on the Xbox series, and it led to a massive delay. And I think we all know how popular Baldur's Gate 3 is, which is kind of crazy to lead to a delay just because you can't get like one of the primarily good features of the game working. I mean, that's why a lot of people play Baldur's Gate 3. Indie devs are struggling to bring their games to Xbox as well, not because of a lack of effort, but because Microsoft's developer assistance is just getting a lot worse. It's the kind of stories you don't see on other platforms. Like, it paints the picture of a system in decline. Capcom is not porting a lot of their games over to Xbox. Their MT Framework engine has problems on the platform, and instead of trying to fix it, they're just skipping the console altogether. They're not the biggest games. The MT Framework is mostly remasters like Monster Hunter Stories and Marvel vs. Capcom, but these are still popular games with fans on the console, so it's telling that Capcom is just like, whatever. Game Pass isn't quite the value it used to be either. After all the ballyhoo they made about how you always get day one games on Game Pass, they took the day one games out of the standard Game Pass subscription. Now if you want day one games like Black Ops 6, you got to get the PC Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate. If you have the standard console Game Pass, no day one games for you. Just another in a long list of ways that the Xbox consoles are being de-emphasized. The PC version of the Game Pass is still just $12 and you get everything. And just to be clear, I moved to PC Game Pass because, to be frank, for consoles to get everything, you gotta pay $20. It doesn't seem like they're trying to push players towards consoles. In fact, it seems like they want everybody to move to PC because that's a better deal. For the doomsayers, that's the ultimate goal, right? Xbox will no longer be a console, and it'll just be a brand. The Microsoft gaming division is going to move to multi-platform with an emphasis on PC. Maybe Xbox will live on as some kind of lockdown hybrid mini PC for use like a console, like the old Steam boxes. And like I said, this sort of thinking a few years ago would have been inconceivable. Xbox was bigger than ever. There's no way. But looking at the division now, it's starting to look like the Activision acquisition really did change them in some fundamental ways. Instead of Xbox acquiring Activision, it more and more looks like Activision is taking over Xbox, and Phil Spencer doesn't want to admit it. I don't mean that literally, but the culling of fan-favorite studios, the brutal layoffs, the terrible customer and developer support, in a lot of ways it just seems like they're neglecting the console experience, and that's right out of the Activision playbook. This would all just be idle negativity, but guys like Phil Spencer really are not helping. From my perspective, it seems like nobody at Xbox really knows what their future is. Maybe it's a consoleless one, maybe it's not. They don't know, and they don't want to tell us that they don't know. With all this negativity swirling around the division over the last year, it would help fans to know what their actual plans are. Do they intend to announce a new Xbox? The Summer Game Fest showed a lot of promising games, but where are those games going to appear? Are they going to be on PC? Are they going to be on PlayStation? We don't have a clear answer, and I just want to emphasize how absolutely absurd that is. Like, imagine Apple announcing a bunch of software releases and vaguely hinting that they could be on PC in some kind of multi-platform future. Everyone would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? It is the equivalent of that. Period. Now, with Sony's PC push, they've been relatively predictable. There is a plan. The game comes out on PS5 first, they wait about a year and release it on PC. There's a couple of more complicated examples, like that Horizon Lego game coming out on the Switch, which is wild, but also the Switch is where the kids are. Horizon Lego is obviously an attempt to advertise the Horizon series to a younger audience, and maybe they'll get into that world and therefore eventually realize that PlayStation is where they gotta go for the real game. That's at least what I think that idea is. If it's not, if it's them going multi-platform, at least you kind of get their platform strategy. There is consistency. They understand the demographic that is going to play the game. Like, you can tell the point is to make money. And again, there's a plan that leads towards that end game. The Xbox, on the other hand, it's all over the place. There's just no consistency at all. The new Doom is going to be on everything. Indiana Jones is a timed console exclusive. It's confusing. And throw in the possibility of these games appearing on Game Pass or not, and the release strategy is just even more confusing. All Xbox has to do is give us some kind of clear idea of what the hell they want to do in the future, rather than a bunch of corporate doublespeak and another tedious aw shucks apology from oafish executives. Just a straightforward roadmap of what the hell Xbox is going to look like in 5 years, because right now it just looks like a mess. The future is not set in stone. There's always room for Xbox to turn things around. It's really only gotten this bad in a year, and volatility is often looked at as a bad thing, but in all seriousness, volatility can refer to things going up as much as down. Xbox could bounce back in an instant. Anything can change in an instant. I mean, maybe Xbox will be back on top someday, and all of its current problems will be long forgotten. Anything can happen, but at least at the moment, things are not looking good. I do hope they're capable of righting the ship and getting things back on track. It would suck if Xbox left the console business entirely. Like, imagine a world where Sony is the only hardcore console maker. Like, they do have a lot of recent stupid mistakes. Granted, they are not on the scale of Xbox, but multiply it by 100. If they own the entire ecosystem, suddenly those small mistakes are much bigger. And I mean, even if they aren't worse. If Sony's the company, when they mess up, it's much bigger. Everyone depends on that. So all I'm asking is for Microsoft to get their act together and stop acting like they've already lost. Because even if they're actually doing well, consumer confidence is everything in the long term. And if everyone thinks Xbox is on the way out or just isn't a serious competitor to Sony, that's where it's going to go. It's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Xbox need to stop acting like a loser. That's it. That's the main thing here. They're not in the best position right now, but the fight is far from over if they decide to fight. Anybody who just rolls over and dies does just that. So don't, Xbox. That's all I've got to say on the matter. What do you think? Leave us a comment. Let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.